Okay, good morning, everyone. I believe that you can hear me okay. I've never done this quite like this before, and going without a sound check, and there's always a bit of hit and miss involved. When I agreed to give this talk, it was several weeks before the lockdown, and the circumstances were very different. I imagined that I would be sitting in the shrine room of the North London Buddhist Centre, face to face with an audience I could see and respond to. And I imagined that that audience would be made up of people who are doing their jobs in the usual way. Instead, here I am talking to my laptop in my house, and I'm not really able to see my audience or read your facial expressions very well. And also, most of us are either working in very new ways, or we find ourselves no longer able to work at all. But these sudden changes in our working lives can offer us an opportunity to reflect on how our work affects us and what it is that our occupation or our livelihood means to us. I'm going to stick with the original structure that I planned for this talk. I'm going to look at the whole issue of work or livelihood in three distinct parts. In the first part, I'm going to consider some general points about how we are affected by our working lives. In the second part, I'm going to take a look at what traditional Buddhist literature says about right livelihood. And in the third part, I'm going to look at how contemporary Buddhists have tried to develop the idea of right livelihood. It's all going to take about 30 minutes. So make sure you're sitting comfortably. And I'm not going to use any visual aids. I thought it was quite enough of a challenge to do this by Zoom without making it complicated with stuff that could all go wrong. So it's just going to be me talking. So let's start with a look at work in general. If I was delivering this talk in front of a live audience like I'd originally planned, then I'd start off by asking the people in the room how many people knew how to make a cup of tea. I'd probably actually ask people to put their hands up if they thought they knew how to make a cup of tea. And I'd expect that most people would raise their hands and say, yes, they could indeed make a cup of tea. And then I'd laugh and tell them that they were all completely absurd. There's nobody in the world can make a cup of tea, at least not on their own. No one on their own can grow the bushes, harvest the leaves, package them up and transport them across the world, let alone purify the water, generate the electricity, make a steel kettle and a porcelain teapot and a nice little cup and saucer. And that's before we even think about milk and sugar. The CEOs of Tetley's or Taylors of Harrogate can't make a cup of tea. To make ourselves a cup of tea is the final act in a huge team effort. It's only possible because we depend on the work of tens of thousands, maybe millions, of other people who we mostly never even see. They mostly only work because we pay them. And we pay for their work by offering our work in exchange. We cannot possibly do everything for ourselves. So we pick something we can do, find someone to pay us for it, and use the money we earn to buy the products of the work of literally millions of strangers. My question, who can make a cup of tea, may seem like a bit of a cheap trick question to you. But it's a trick question designed to make people think. And specifically, to try and make people think about how intimately connected we are to everyone else in the world. And indeed, also how intimately connected we are to nature, which gives us the raw materials, if we treat it right. It is through our work that we express that connection with the rest of the world most strongly. Work is an expression of the famous Buddhist metaphor of Indra's net, of seeing the universe as a great web of connections, a mesh that links everyone and everything to everything else. We use work to give what we can to the world. And in return, work gives us the means to take what we need, or what we think we need anyway. And work takes up a huge amount of our time and energy. We may like this, we may not. It is fair to say that work can be boring, annoying, and stressful. If we are unlucky, we may find that the work that we do is dangerous. The virus has made some previously safe jobs suddenly much more dangerous. I'm thinking of bus drivers, for example. There are some jobs where we may feel exploited or feel that we are exploiting others. And some jobs may harm us or make us harm others. Let's face it, if people want to moan about something, then work is pretty near the top of the list of things they want to moan about. But we need to look at the many positive aspects of work. In his best-selling book on happiness, the economist Richard Layard has discovered that people in work are significantly happier than people without work. That is especially true if the work is secure, with a predictable income and no fear of unemployment, and if it doesn't take us far away from our family and friends. So much as we may moan about it, work actually makes us happier. After all, millions of people around the world choose to work for nothing. One very well documented example is the unpaid work of homemakers and child carers, who are overwhelmingly women. But this Buddhist center offers another example. Many of us work here for no pay because we get our rewards in other ways. We certainly get plenty of job satisfaction here. Work gives each of us an identity. We say, I'm a bus driver, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a shopkeeper. Work gives us a structure and a pattern to our days and our years. Work lets us learn new skills and acquire new knowledge. Work can broaden the mind. It brings us into daily contact with people who are different from us, people who look different, who have different ideas about politics and religion, or different tastes and habits. Work lets us give to the rest of the world as well as taking from it. In so doing, it challenges us to develop as people. If there's one thing that's worse than work on Monday morning, it's no work on Monday morning. Our choice of jobs is influenced by our own personality and our skills. Let me give you a simple example from my own life. When I was a small boy, my mother said that I had a very loud voice, and the only way she could get me to stop talking was to give me a book to read. So she took me to the public library, and I got the habit of reading 2 or 3 books a week for the whole of my childhood and teenage years. So what can a person do with a loud voice who's read a lot of books, but become a teacher? But our jobs are not just determined by our personality, but in turn they shape our personality as well. My choice of occupation as a teacher taught me quite a bit. I had to learn to plan ahead. I had to learn to be honest with myself about learning from my mistakes when lessons went disastrously wrong. I had to learn to communicate by speaking, by listening, and by observing people's faces and body language. That's something I miss now when I'm giving this talk on a laptop instead of to a room full of people. I had to learn assertiveness, time management, and basic counseling skills. My desire to learn to cope with the stresses of the job led me to a newly opened Buddhist center in an old fire station in Bethnal Green. I thought that maybe learning to meditate would help me cope with the stress of my job. You'll probably be pleased to know that it does. Now, let's just pause there for a moment. I've tried to give us an idea of how important work is for us. Work is so much more than just a paycheck. It doesn't just give us an income. It gives us an identity. And though the work we do is partly the outcome of our personality, it also has a tremendous influence on shaping our personality. It's no wonder the Buddha thought right livelihood mattered.